Are you someone that wants to build generational wealth for you and your family, but can struggle to kind of pull back the curtains and see a practical way to make it happen in this world filled with get-rich-quick schemes? Well, today we've got Mike Williams on the podcast, who's a real estate investor who knows how to analyze the risk and take actionable steps. You're listening to Take a Step, the podcast where we help faith-driven young men embrace the process and take action on their personal growth. My name's Josh Johnston. Let's take a step. Before we jump into the conversation, I want to give a big shout out to Woodcraft South for sponsoring Take a Step. If there's someone in life that you want to leave an impression on, so if you're in entrepreneurship or sales and you want to impress a top client with a logo engraved gift, or if you want to send a sentimental gift to a spouse like a custom charcuterie board or cutting board, Woodcraft South designs custom woodwork that just captivates your attention. And not only do they deliver amazing work, but it's a brand that's so easy to get behind because Turner Lee, who's the owner, fully embodies the take a step mentality. He spent so long just working behind a desk and building this unfulfilling life. So he started this passion project in woodworking. And a couple years ago, he decided to take the risk and turn this part-time passion into a full-time business that continues to grow to this day. So if there's anyone you want to leave a lasting impression on, or if you just want a custom decor piece to elevate your workspace, you got to check out Woodcraft South. The link to their Instagram will be in the show notes below. Check them out, ask for Turner, and let them know you heard about him from Take a Step. Let's get right into the episode. Mike, what is going on? Excited to finally have you on the Take a Step podcast. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Yes, sir. Good to be here.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I know just from our relationship that we've built over the past couple of years. I know you're a wealth of knowledge. I know you won't say that about yourself, but it's been really cool from my perspective, getting to know, everything just from a life perspective, but also especially on the topic of wealth, both financially and holistically. But before we dive in, I'd love to have you just kind of, brief introduction, however you think it makes sense.
Yeah, sure. My name is Mike Williams, and I started my wealth journey like in my 30s. I just turned 40. So it's been about a 10-year journey. I wish I would have started sooner. Currently, I'm the VP of Investor Relations at a private equity firm called Open Door Capital. But I've had a crazy journey through production and music industry and all kinds of stuff. I'm married. I have 2 kids. I love to rock climb and play outside as much as possible. So that's probably the 30-second version of
perfect.
Of me.
Perfect. Yeah, no, that's perfect. And one thing I want to dive into to just kick things off is on the topic of wealth, because I know that's where you focus a lot of your time, both personally and professionally. There's a lot of different things that you're involved with. But just from like a 10,000-foot perspective, when it comes from the financial standpoint, like how do you view wealth? Do you view it as, my income? Do you view it as net worth? What's in your portfolio? I'd love to just hear your perspective on how you view wealth from a financial standpoint.
Yeah, that's a tricky question because my initial thought when you say, hey, how do you view wealth? I always ask myself this question. If wealth was measured in time, what would you do differently? That shift really didn't happen though until later in life. So like right now, I would say I view wealth and how much time freedom that I have. But from like a financial standpoint, I view that through like passive income, right? Or passive cash flow, because ultimately that's what's freeing up my time is the passive income or the passive cash flow. Yeah. Do I look at my net worth and do I track things like that? Do I track my income? Yes, I absolutely look at all that stuff. But ultimately, if I'm like beginning with the end in mind, then it's all about how much passive cash flow is being created.
So when you're looking at some of these decisions, looking at the cash flow, looking at, what's the decision from the investor standpoint, there's always going to be a certain amount of risk associated with that, right? So, and I know there's a lot of different opinions on, risk tolerance versus like being risk adverse. So for you, I know you have a lot of risk tolerance. You're willing to bear a lot of the risk if you see the payoff at the end. So when you're looking at these opportunities, how do you analyze the risk?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's kind of a fluffy answer too, because I would say everyone has their own sleep at night number, right?
I like that.
And yeah, to your point, I might have a higher risk tolerance than the next guy, but it's okay if you have a lower risk tolerance too. It doesn't mean you can't be an investor. It doesn't mean you can't build wealth, right? I always say too, like, pay attention to your spouse as well. Because like my spouse has a lower risk tolerance than I do. And I feel like God joins you with your spouse for a reason, right? Usually that's pretty specific and strategic. And a lot of the times it's to balance you out, and I know you and I have talked about kind of like the string to your balloon, right? Like sometimes I'm the balloon, right? I'm floating. I got all these ideas. I'm ready to go. I'm high risk tolerance, and my wife's more of like the string where she's like, wait a second, honey, like, I don't know if I feel comfortable with that. And it's not one's bad and one's good, right? They're actually both super helpful. And like the balloon's only really fun and useful if you have a string on it and can enjoy it, right? So, I think you have to pay attention to that. Ultimately, it's not emotional, it's math too, right? So, when you're looking at investments, you'll come up with a return structure that works good for you. Ultimately you'll come up with a vehicle that works good for you. And when I mean vehicle, I'm saying like, do you understand business and do you understand people and do you like to grow businesses and build systems and maybe really good with processes? I'm not. I understand real estate. I understand how that works. I'm good at dealing with people. And so I can manage tenants and do all that stuff. And real estate's a great business that you can farm a lot of stuff out to, right? So you don't have to be good at the systems. And so that's another part of my I would say risk profile is do something, invest in something that you understand, right? And I chose real estate for that because I get it.
Yeah. Like what different areas in real estate would you say you focus more on? Do you focus more on single family, multifamily, any other types of properties?
Yeah. So I started off probably like a lot of people start off, and I bought a single family home for my family and I, and then at some point in time, our family grew, we moved, and I kept that original house. And then I've done that a couple of times. So I have a couple of single family homes that have been really great. And then I started learning more, listening to podcasts, reading books, going to meetups, and bought some small multifamily properties. Now I've got some short-term rentals. I also have some ownership in apartments and mobile home parks and self-storage facilities. And so my portfolio has expanded, and I've been able to diversify over the 10 plus years that I've been investing. But yeah, it all kind of starts small, right?
Yeah. So did you obviously, like, I know your career is in the real estate investing space now, but were you diving into your own personal portfolio before you step foot into the real estate space from a career perspective?
Yeah, and it was really just a side hustle at first, right? I was a pastor for a number of years, and ultimately I started thinking, man, how am I ever going to retire, right? You're doing meaningful work, but not necessarily a lot of income. And so, yeah, just you have the waking hours after your job is over, right? Like most people have, like the two jobs, and Josh, I know you talk about this on the show a lot, but like you have that 9 to 5, but then you have this second set of hours from like 5 to 10, right? That you can really put in some work and learn a lot. So yeah, I kind of started that way, just side hustle. Once I got to a point where I was kind of locked eyes with, oh my goodness, like the passivity is the way, right? And I understand real estate, and I think that's the way. I started looking for more and more opportunities to add value in the real estate arena. And yeah, that's how I met my business partner, Brandon Turner. And, how can I add value? How can I add value? Right. That's the question I asked myself. How can I add value? He needed someone with my skill sets. And so that kind of took me to the next level. But, most people, you're not just going to start off in a career in real estate. Maybe you are, but I think for the most part, it's going to be kind of a side hustle that you build and build and build. And then one day the side hustle becomes the main hustle, or at least you have to make a decision on which way you want to go with your career.
Yeah, and that opens up a whole nother conversation. So many people have some sort of side hustle or passion project that they're working on. But there comes a point where if you're starting to see some success, like when is that time to make that jump? And I love that conversation. But for you, obviously it was something that you were looking at from the perspective of how can I build wealth, and still work the full-time job, which was something that gave you a lot of purpose and fulfillment, I'm sure. So what was the point where you realized, hey, this may be something that I may need to look at or consider my options on what it would look like to pursue this as a career when it comes to real estate?
Yeah, I think it was just learning how income and taxes work, as lame as that sounds, right?
Yeah.
Like if you have three different primary ways to make money, right? You're going to get taxed as either like an active income worker, right? 1099, maybe you own your own business, something like that, right? Or you're going to get taxed as a W-2 employee. That's pretty straightforward. You go work for someone else, they give you a W-2. Or you, start something like real estate or other ways to earn passive income, like that's door number 3. And let's say like you're doing one of those three people, right? They each earn $50,000. One is 1099, one's W-2, and one's passive. Well, the 1099 guy, he's going to get taxed the most, right? Then W-2 is next, then passive income's third, like hardly any tax on the passive income. And that's just how you chose to earn the income. There's nothing wrong with either one of those three doors, but the government has said, or the IRS has said, hey, listen, based on how you earn that income is how we're going to tax you, right? And so I was like, man, gosh, if that's the case, why don't you just pick door number 3, right? And try to start earning income passively to ultimately avoid paying taxes, or less taxes, right? So that's where it kind of started in my head. And then I was like, okay, well, how do I do more of that, and go through that door? And so, sometimes I think it's more important that you decide than what you decide. Again, at some point you have to pick and go. And I knew, like, if you can look 10, 15 years down the road and go, okay, this is what I want my life to look like. What decisions do you need to do now in order to start making that progress? Because this is not a get rich quick scheme, right? You're going to start and it's going to take you a decade and maybe more, right? Like I've been in a decade and I'm still trying to make progress. So,
Yeah. I mean, have you seen a lot of that over the last decade or so with, people wanting to get into the industry, hearing, the wild success stories when it comes to passive income and real estate, and people come in expecting to see a return at a much faster rate than what's actually realistic?
Yeah, I think it comes down to risk and capacity. Like I know some people who have started and, all of a sudden they have 100 units overnight, and they're crushing it and going it. And, that's not my style. I'd much rather have, 10 paid off units than 100 leveraged units. Right. Part of that's like my access to capital. Part of that's my own capacity and how I choose to spend my time. But yeah, I mean, I think if you are trying to do it quickly, you can make a lot of mistakes and get into big trouble. Because yeah, I mean, there's a lot of ways to mess it up.
I mean, from in your story, has there ever been any scenarios where you felt like you were starting to get over leveraged or taking on a little bit too much than you can chew because of your risk tolerance?
Yeah, I would say, right now I own some property in Maui, and, short-term rentals are great there. And I was able to acquire them because I was living there at the time and I had some local knowledge and knew the right people and was able to acquire these properties. Again, from a math standpoint, they're still fine. But from a government regulation standpoint, they could get wiped out overnight, like you just never know. Like it's a little bit of the Wild West right now. And you're seeing this in other towns like New York and places who have just completely eliminated Airbnb, like just boom, one government regulation comes down, and that could be $1 million of my portfolio just like trashed, because the numbers don't work if it's not a short-term rental. If you had to like convert it to a long-term rental, like then it wouldn't cash flow. Then I wouldn't make the monthly payment. The bank's not going to go, oh, well, Mike, you should have, you should have run your math differently, right? They're going to come want the property back. Right. So I think sometimes when you're moving, and I'd done that, like, again, kind of a ready, fire, aim thing, which is my personality sometimes, but not doing a deeper dive into what the underlying, like sentiment was from like a governmental and policy standpoint, could get me into trouble. Right. And so I think there's stuff like that where when you're new and, you may just not know all the local laws, and you may not know all the things, like, especially in management, if you say the wrong thing to a tenant, ask the wrong question, that violates the law, like, you get in big trouble real quick. So yeah. I mean, thankfully I've been, protected from ever doing anything like that, but I've definitely made my fair share of mistakes where I think God just showed me some favor.
Yeah. You've alluded to it a couple times, but I want to hear your perspective on just the difference in the levels of importance between the actions and the planning. Cause like you talked about ready, fire, aim, you said, what'd you say earlier? You said it's more important that you make a decision than what the decision is, or something. How'd you frame that?
Exactly. It's more important that you decide than what you decide.
Yeah. I want to hear your perspective. Like, why do you put so much more importance on the actions rather than the planning process?
Yeah. I've just seen a lot of people get into what's called analysis paralysis, right? At some point, there's always another book to read. There's always another calculator to buy. There's always another spreadsheet you can run. There's always another pro forma out there that, you can analyze. And, at some point, there's no more knowledge that's going to help you, right? It's about taking action. It's about, overcoming your fear of failure and fear of making mistakes, right? And just being able to go ahead and make those mistakes and learn from it, right?
Guys, we'll get back to the episode in just a second, but I've got to tell you all about some really exciting news for the future of Take a Step. I'll explain it like this. It took me so long to realize the value in surrounding yourself with the right people and the impact that can have on the person you want to become. So what we're doing through Take a Step is launching the Tribe. The Tribe is a community of like-minded, faith-driven young men who want to take action on their personal and professional growth. You'll be placed in a small group of like-minded guys who want to build real relationships and push one another to pursue their full potential. What you're going to get out of this group first is just a strong brotherhood of people who want to see you grow just as much as they want to grow. Think of this group as your own personal board of advisors who want to give advice and also celebrate the wins with you along the way. And because of this positive peer pressure, you'll see accelerated growth because it's not just you. You're surrounded with guys who see the value in not only investing in themselves, but also those around them. If this sounds like a group you'd want to be a part of, or at least would want to know about, using the link in the description, you can join the waitlist, and that's not a commitment. All it is saying that you want to be the first to know so that once it launches, you can get your spot secured. At the end of the day, you become who you surround yourself with. So who do you want to become, and how are you putting yourself around people that are going to get you to that point?
And
like that, I talk about that all the talk about that all the time, is like from the perspective of, if even if I act and make the mistake, that's still a net positive because I have the momentum going, so I can always pivot. I can always learn what went wrong and then make the adjustment to take the action, the next best step to make it right. But I would never have the knowledge. I would never know what didn't work. I would never have the momentum already going if I was just continuing to figure out, all right, that's not going to work. Let me try to figure out the best step. And if you just go through that process, the analysis paralysis process over and over, nothing ever actually gets done.
Yep. You just find what's that most important next step. Keep going. I always say you're never losing, right? You're either winning or you're learning, right? So as long as you're taking insights from what you failed at and learn from, then you won't lose.
Yeah, I love that. You mentioned going to that you partnered with Brandon Turner, and I know Brandon's a one of the bigger names in the real estate space. Big personal brand. Did you already have were y'all connected already before you joined up with him, or did you know about him through his personal brand? And as a follow up to that, like since joining a name like that in the real estate industry, like what have you learned just from someone who's built up a brand of that magnitude in the real estate space?
Yeah, for sure. This is one of those take action things. I didn't know Brandon. I had just been listening to Bigger Pockets, which was like a really well-known educational, podcast and website. And, there's books and all kinds of free resources to learn about real estate. And, the biggest takeaway I had from listening to those, podcasts, it was just a bunch of normal people just taking action, right? They weren't super crazy smart. They didn't do anything like outside the box. Like they just did the next thing. Right. And so I got a lot of confidence from that. But one day I was listening to one of those podcasts and Brandon, who was the host at the time, said, "Hey, I'm hiring for this marketing position. If you're interested, apply." And I did, right? Again, nothing earth shattering. I just applied. Right. And, I think through a little bit of just taking the next step, if I got an email back, okay, great. Take the next step. Okay. I got another email back with some questions. Take the next step, through that. And again, I think a little bit of favor. I was able to, ultimately meet Brandon, talk with him a few times. And then again, back to what I said earlier, how can I create value, right? Do everything I can to add value to whatever he's trying to do. And, long story short, he was building this private equity company, and he needed someone who was willing to speak with investors and educate investors about real estate. And it worked out. Yeah.
It's very cool. I love in that process, you emphasize just taking the next step. Like that's all the focus was like, all right, this happened. What's the next logical step? This happened. What's the next logical step? And I feel like so many people get so caught up in that end destination and where am I trying to get to in the long run, and where it makes it I recently kind of coined a mission statement for Take a Step, which is helping, redefining the way we view success by focusing on by focusing on the process rather than the destination. Because the destination, putting your focus on that, all that does is it delays fulfillment and it kills progress because it makes the finish line the only thing that matters. But if you focus on the process is what are the next steps I'm taking, then that's going to move you down the line, resulting in the destination you're planning on. But your focus isn't on the destination, it's on the process, which is going to be more efficient, right? And it sounds like that's what you're saying through that story.
Yeah, that and when I first met Brandon, he's got a great personality, great on the podcast, super down to earth, normal dude. The one thing that's superhuman, I would say, about Brandon is how fanatic he is about habit tracking and having a system in place for keeping himself accountable and on track, right? He's not recently, but he's really into, it's called EOS, which is, entrepreneur operating system. I mean, we eat, sleep, and breathe EOS, and that all came from Brandon and his kind of obsession around habit tracking. But yeah, that's another thing I would say, just through knowing him and being a part of what he's built. And I would, just say to anyone who's listening, you've got to get something in place to help you track your habits and just be intentional about what those things are, what those steps are, and come up with a way to ingrain that in your rhythms.
That's true both personally and professionally, right? If it all aligns. Yeah. I'm a big anti work-life balance guy. I think more in the sense of work-life alignment. How can I have these systems and these steps that bridge the gap between the actions I'm taking in the personal life I'm building with my family, my faith, my health, and then also with my business, in my professional life. These it's not like one's balancing against the other and they're fighting against each other, because that leads to burnout and overwhelm, and lack of fulfillment in what you're doing. But how can you take the steps and create the systems that track your habits holistically? And that, I know EOS is dips big into that. The coaching practice I work for full time, we do a lot of the same thing as far as like what is the ultimate life we're trying to build, not just the business or not just personally.
Yeah.
What's the life, and how are my actions being tracked in a way that's building that life?
Yeah, absolutely. I heard on a podcast one time this like imagery of like work-life balance, right? And they equated it to a ballerina, oddly enough. But like if you look at a ballerina on their toes, they look like they have this impeccable balance. But what is actually happening is all these little micro movements, right? They're constantly moving their feet. And you might not notice it because there's such small movements, but there's never like one point where they're just completely still and balanced perfectly. And I think of that way about our lives and the way we integrate, these systems and processes and things that keep our work and our life balanced. It's a bunch of little micro movements, all the time. To your point, sometimes you got to pivot, sometimes you got to change, but you're constantly making these little micro adjustments to stay balanced.
Love that. That's a great analogy. One thing I know that's big with just because I've listened to some of his podcasts, but that's big with Brandon, and I know you take, it's a huge focus in your life as well, is, how your faith, how your relationship with God has also shaped your perspective on wealth. I want to hear about that, because obviously when like a lot of people that get into real estate, they're talking about passive income. A lot of it's out of money motivation, right? How is like the focus is on the money while your focus is on the time freedom, right? Because the time is what allows you to ultimately do what you feel like God has put you on this earth to do. So like how has your relationship with the Lord shaped your perspective on wealth?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Again, it comes back to that time. Like, what are you going to do with let's say you just dropped all the passive income on you that you could ever want and hope for. Now what, right? What are you going to do with that time? And, for my wife and I, ultimately, the reason that we'd like to have the extra time is I was a missions pastor for a long time. I love traveling. I love going overseas, sharing the gospel. I feel like God's given me a unique gift to be in countries that are a little less comfortable. And I can still thrive and be okay. And so I loved leading teams. I love having influence with people and pushing them out of their comfort zone. Whether that be in real estate or work leadership moments, or whether that be in like mission trip type moments, right? I love just kind of pushing people outside their comfort zone. And so, ultimately we'd like to have the time freedom to be able to take months at a time and go travel, as well as serve, right? And passive income can free that up for you, right? So ultimately, again, I would challenge anyone who thinks it's about the money. It's not about the money. It's about the time. But it's not even about the time. What are you going to do with the time, right? What do you need that time for? Like, really think about that deeply. Like, what is it that you're looking for? Because especially when things get hard, right? And deals don't go your way, and, you've got to have something that's keeping you driven, right? Because, ultimately, I don't think money is enough for that. I can pause there if you had another question, but that's the big why. That's how I really look at the motivation of time.
Yeah, no, I love that, because like people put so much focus on money. Like money is the goal, and it's like I love the conversation of, all right, money. Money is worthless itself. Like if I give you $100 bill, that means nothing. It's what does the money allow you to do? And the money frees up your time. The time allows you to do whatever you feel like you're supposed to be doing. If you like you and me, if you're a follower of Christ, then you feel like God has placed a specific purpose on your life. That time freedom gives you the ability to take action on what you feel that purpose is. And, you talked about that you feel like you can thrive in environments and countries that are uncomfortable or a little rougher. And I think a reason for that. And just me knowing you and knowing your personality for so long is, I feel like you're one of the more simple guys I think I've ever met, where you don't, it's not that you can't have and can't go do, but like you live this life of simplicity, that I envy at times. I'm not going to lie. Cause I'm like, I mean, I don't know why he doesn't feel like he doesn't want to go do this, or what he doesn't want to have that. Like you wear Chacos almost every day. If you're not wearing Chacos, you're wearing Crocs. And I know you have, other than that, you have like one pair of dress shoes. Like how do you thrive in this life of simplicity?
Yeah, it's very simple for me because, like once you start making money and building wealth, there's what's called this lifestyle creep, right? And if you can hold that back, right, your ability to build wealth and accelerate the time it's going to take you to have that time freedom is exponential, right? So there's this quote that I love, and I forget who said it or where I heard it, but it's live like others don't, so one day that you can live like they can't, right? Live like others don't, so one day you can live like they can't. And that struck a chord with me. And so if you can make these sacrifices now, right? Like I could go buy whatever car I wanted to, honestly. But I drive a 10-year-old truck and it's paid off, and I like my truck, and so it's one of those things where you just, if you can hold off that lifestyle creep, even when you start making more money, live off what it looked like you lived off, like when you first got married, right? Or you got that first job, like keep those expenses low. And then you can be more generous, right? Yeah. And just, again, I think there's a beauty in just living simply anyway, but it's really the bigger picture, right? It's like I can hold off on a lot of those wants and needs to accelerate the timeline of freedom.
Yeah, and like one of the things I heard you talk about back, it was right when we first met. Book that you read, that you made the recommendation that I read, and it's probably top 5 books I've ever read, and it's really shaped my perspective on this topic: The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. The living not only from the material, but also from the time perspective. Like, are we just wanting to, like, it starts off with the topic of, when you ask anyone in America, how you doing? What's the response 99% of the time?
Oh, good. Just busy.
Just busy. Like, are we saying that because we feel accomplished, we feel good just to load things on our calendar and on our schedule because we feel productive? Like, are we doing that just to have things on the calendar, or is there actually a specific purpose that's driving us towards where we want to get to in the life that we want to live? And that in that book, it talks about, the same mindset applies to the stuff that we have. Like, he talks about going in your closet, and like you probably couldn't even tell, like, if most people probably have shirts and pants and shorts that they would be like, oh yeah, I forgot I had these in their closet. Like, why are those sitting there when you're not even going to use them? All that does is it clutters up your space. It clutters up your time, your head. When, like, living this life of simplicity, just, I feel like, going back to the topic of freedom, just gives you the clarity and the peace. And that, like, so, like, have you experienced that with this simple life?
Yeah. I just, again, I equate it back to, you've got to figure out what's that monthly income number that you need in order to eject, right? What's that? Like, get super crystal clear on that, right? And then everything you add into your life is going to take away from that number, right? So it becomes, I don't know, just an exercise of delayed gratification, really. Because do you, like, if you knew it was going to take you 2, 3, 4 years longer to be financially free because you want that nicer car, would you do it? Like, what's the trade-off? Like, that's ultimately what my mind does when I think of, do I want to go buy that new thing, or have have nice clothes, have nice, whatever it is,
Yeah.
upgrade that house, upgrade that car, you know, like it's less emotional and more math in my brain. You're just you're holding the line on letting the lifestyle creep so that you can unlock the thing that you actually want.
Yeah, and like, it sounds so logical, but when you talk about removing the emotions, like the emotions are what typically drive our decisions, especially when it comes to the topic of comfort.
Sure.
Like people always want to make decisions, and I fall victim to this as well, even though I talk about it in all my content and all my podcasts. Like I fall victim to it all the time of like, what's the comfortable decision? What's the decision that's going to make us feel good? Whether if it's like genuinely like physical comfort, whether if it's like mental comfort and how we're perceived in our friend groups and in the world. Like,
ego.
Yeah, how have you continued to make those decisions, knowing that like it's a very like non-ego driven decision making process that you're making, because like knowing that you could have this image that so many people would look at and say, you know what, he's successful. How have you been able to continue to make the decisions where you're saying, yeah, that's not the goal. The goal is, what does God call me to do? What's going to provide the most for my family, and what's going to give us the most freedom possible?
Yeah. Ultimately, I know like it comes back to like delayed gratification, but also, generosity is fun. As you start really compartmentalizing your finances, right? Like instead of having that new thing, right, that's going to cost me another $300 a month, like how can I be more generous with that $300 a month, right? Or what else could you be doing? So I kind of think back to like the priority in which you have your finances oriented. Like give, save, live, right? That's something our church has like a mantra of when talking about finances. But yeah, if you give first, save second, live on the rest. It's like that story of the kids eating the marshmallows. If you haven't heard that story or seen,
I don't think I have.
Oh my gosh, yeah. So they did this test. You can look up the scientific study, but they did this thing where they had these little kids and they put a marshmallow in front of them and they said, hey, you can have this marshmallow now, but if you wait 15 minutes and you don't eat that marshmallow in front of you, we'll give you 2 marshmallows, right? And, I forget which percentage of kids ate the marshmallows or waited for the second marshmallows, but they tracked those kids for like all through their school years and into their adulthoods. And an overwhelming percentage of the kids that waited for the second marshmallow were way more successful in life, like
Really?
by a large margin. Yeah. So it's it's the concept of delayed gratification, right? So I have that locked in my brain too, when it comes to wanting to hold off on, on that kind of ego-driven pleasures. Now I know that like there's more success on the other side of kind of like waiting.
Yeah, and it's cool because it's like it's almost like it's I don't want to say it's genetic, but it's like those that mindset and those beliefs and the ability to withhold the instant gratification for the delayed gratification at a young age plays out later on in life. Like for you, I know, like for your kids, I know you have translated a lot of the language of wealth that you've learned over your career, through making the mistakes and now experiencing the successes in the world of real estate and passive income that you are. I know you've translated a lot of that to your kids, and you have a very specific parenting style that's different than most. And it's really cool to see and like hear the stories that I hear you share all the time from the experiences your kids have in their friend groups when they're interacting with other adults. So how would you say your parenting style is different than most?
Ooh. Yeah, that's a good question. Not trying to,
You're not tooting your own horn.
toot
I'm
my own
welcoming
horn.
it.
Yeah, I love parenting is so much fun. I think that one of the biggest things that I love most is just like, again, it comes back to time, right? Like you just have to be intentional about creating space to spend time with your kids, right? Even down to the activities that we choose. We all do it. We all like do a sport that all four of us go like a couple times a week. We're all four. They're all doing the same activity, right? And we just intentionally like build our rhythms where we just get to spend a lot of time together, down to like how we school our kids, right? You know, we chose to homeschool our kids early on. Again, not because of, I think a lot of people right now are choosing to homeschool their kids because of like, you know, woke culture or whatever.
Yeah.
But that wasn't the impetus for us. We were like, my gosh, I can work from anywhere in the world. I have all this time freedom based on how we've oriented our lives. Why would I not want to then orient my kids' schedule around that same freedom, you know? And so, yeah, that's a big part of our decisions, right? Is just how much time we get to spend with each other, you know, for these short years, right? Like they're grown and gone before you know it, right? And so that's a big part of it. I mean, I remember growing up, no one ever talked about money. That's a big part of our relationship too. Like we talk about things. I'm honest with budgets and how we spend money and how much things cost. And so, yeah, I think that's a big thing. I read this book recently called The Value Creation Kid or something like that. And it's all about how you can like talk and teach your kids how to like create value in the world. And I'm really big on that right now. You know, like I think kids have a lot more ability to rise to the occasion than modern society gives them credit for. You know, like they can do a lot of things. And they're super smart. We're not big on technology either. So again, you eliminate technology and let them be bored. The stuff that they come up with is amazing. So that's probably another like big bucket of like a big topic in our household, which we, or I was like, or a big bucket that we're kind of hard up on as far as our parenting is like very low technology.
Yeah. So like to get practical with that, like for the new dads, or like for me, like being a new dad, or the young fathers, you know, what are some ways that we can focus on helping our kids create like real value in the world? Because like you said, like I feel like we don't give kids, the youth, enough credit for, you know, what they can actually do and what they can actually produce. So how can we, what can we help our kids focus on to actually create real value and help them see like the fruits of their labor?
Yeah. I mean, when they're really young, you know, my kids are 13 and 11, right? So it's a little bit different now for me. You know, if I'm talking to someone who's like just starting off, you know, and has young kids like you, Josh, it's just time, you know. Yeah, there's what's that phrase? It's like love is spelled Time. And it's like everything that you can do to put guardrails around your time and attention is what you should be focused on when they're little, you know?
Yeah.
Because
I'm reading a book
right now, you know?
Yeah. I'm reading a book by it's like a devotion style book, but it's you know, Ryan Holiday.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So he wrote a book that's like daily devotions for dads, for new fathers, and every day has like a specific topic, and he has, you know, different quotes or different examples from you know, historic figures and how their parenting style was, and each month has its own specific theme or topic. So March, since we're at the time we're recording this, it's in March. It's family first is the topic for March, and one of the ones from I think 2 mornings ago I read it, but it was talking about so many parents try to figure out like, what specifically am I going to do with my kids when I'm with them? Like, what are we going to talk about? Like, am I going to show them the right things? And like what he was saying in this, and I forgot who he used it as an example, but he was saying like, it's more important that you're there than like Like all we kind of overlook or like estimate the content in those moments, but
Yep.
it's just like they look back on those moments and remember just the presence, right?
Yep.
And it sounds like that's kind of what you're saying.
That's exactly what I'm saying. Like just be,
Yeah.
and when you're there, be there. Don't be on your phone while you're there,
Mm-hmm.
like, cause then you're physically there, but you're not mentally there. Right. Like be fully available. And I always say this to folks, especially in those young formative years, everything is caught, not taught. Right. So you think you might have these wonderful words that you're going to say and teach, and, maybe have big plans to, convey all this nice information to your kids, but they're watching more than they're listening, especially in those young years, right? It's caught, not taught. So if you just take that, what do you want them to catch from you? What behaviors are you currently doing that they are catching? And do you want them to catch that, right? What are you not doing, right, that you ought to be doing so that they do catch it, right? And yeah, I think about that a lot. I mean, that's a lifelong thing with kids, but I think especially in those formative years, they're watching everything, how you respond, how you talk to people, how you act around people. Like they're taking their cues from you. So yeah, I would say time, like you said, be present, be there, be fully there. And yeah, it's caught, not taught. So just be aware of your behavior, how you're acting.
Very good. Well, as we kind of wrap up the conversation, there's one topic and question I love to spend a little bit of time on with each guest, and I'm really anxious to kind of dive into it a little bit with you. So, with my mission behind Take a Step, it's very action oriented, rejecting complacency and committing to the actions and taking that initial step toward on both your personal and professional growth. And so many people, like you were talking about earlier, experience the fear, the paralysis by analysis, the judgment of others. It's like there's all these reasons why it won't work or why I'm too scared to do it. How can people who are just kind of going through the motions in this complacent lifestyle they're in right now, how can these people start to take the initial steps towards building a life that actually brings true fulfillment that's in line with their passions and purpose?
Oh man, everything starts in your thoughts, right? So I kind of, this is my initial response, is everything starts in your thoughts, right? Your thoughts become your actions become your habits become your character, and that's ultimately what defines you, right? So if everything starts in your thoughts, then what are you listening to? Who are you listening to? What are you reading? Who are you hanging out with? Right? Like, Josh, I know you and I talk about this a lot, right? Show me your friends, I'll show you your future. Right? You're the average of the 5 people that you hang out with, right? All of those, you've heard that said probably 100 different ways. But it's so true, because all of that informs your thoughts. So you really have to protect that, right? You have to be very intentional about that, right? So, yeah, if you're just going through the motions and you're kind of stuck on taking action, I would say, what are you feeling your thoughts? And part of that is, who are you hanging out with, right? And I would say, if I look back to when I first started my kind of journey towards, building passive income and investing in real estate and doing the things that I'm doing now, it all started with community of people, right? So I would say like 1,000% it's community, right? So whether that's like, I went to in-person meetups, and I still have like really strong friendships and investment partners and people that, one's my CPA right now, one's my GC right now on a project that I'm building. Another guy's my hard money lender. Like, one's my real estate agent. Like these people that I'm like doing big deals with, I all met through just like-minded community. And so I think that's a huge next step for anyone who's looking to, just be intentional about their actions. right? Is find that like-mindedness, but also, you've got to educate yourself. You got to read the books. You got to listen to the podcasts. You got to start doing the things that are going to inform your thoughts. Because again, I come back to your thoughts will become your actions. It's not if, it's they will. No matter if those are good thoughts or bad thoughts, right? But your thoughts will become your actions. So be intentional about what you're putting into your thoughts. And those actions, I mean, for most things, you want them to become habits, right? These habit trackers that we've talked about, you want those actions to turn into habits if they're good, right? And then, yeah, like that's ultimately what's going to drive your progress.
No, like on both of those, on the thought life and then also the community. First on the thought life, we have direct control over what we allow our mind to dwell on. Like it's not like thoughts come into our head or the content that is poured into us is not because it's always because we chose to, whether if it's through scrolling, whether if it's through reading, whether if it's the content that the people we're around or is feeding into us, whatever is fed into our mind and our mind dwells on, we have control over that. So if we have control over that, why would we not use that to our advantage and put stuff into our heads, put the thoughts into our minds that will initiate action towards where we actually want to get to, and not only where we want to get to, but the kind of person we want to become. And that gets into the community component. Cause like, me, we like, this is one of my biggest things. And it's why I'm building the tribe community, right? It's because it's next to time. I'm a believer that our network, our relationships is our greatest asset. It's what we have the advantage over to say, hey, if this is the kind of person I want to become, who embodies those qualities of that person, and go get around those people. And 100%. As a byproduct, you will become that person. Because it's like, you were saying this when you were talking about finding the right people originally. I was thinking like, you know what? That's so true, because I could not imagine me being someone who is just kind of coasting through life and, doesn't want to actually go out and go get it and pursue growth personally and professionally, and being around people that is a lifestyle for them. Like I would not be welcome in that circle if I wasn't doing that. Mm-hmm. So if that's something you want to do and you're not currently doing it, I guarantee you that you're around people who are currently not doing it as well, because they welcome that. They want that passivity, I guess that's the word. Or they welcome the complacency, right? Because they don't want people doing much better than them around them. They want people who are going to kind of be just like them. But if you want to get around people who are going to grow, who are going to take that action, just being in the presence of that will initiate that action-oriented mindset in you as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. I've heard it said this way, your network is your net worth, right? You will absolutely be influenced by the people that you're around and the people that you know. And if you're trying to get into those communities, right, and figure out, because some people are like, oh man, like everyone I know is a bum, they're not doing anything with their lives. So how do I get into that next level, right? Well, start asking yourself, how can you add value, right? If you first can figure out how to add value, the sky's the limit.
Yeah, I think people are very, very internal focused on, the consumption and, what can I get from the world? But once you start to shift that focus to external on what can I provide to the world, how can I add the value? Mm-hmm. That's almost always returned to you and value added into your life. So it's like people flip it. They're saying, how can I receive the value? And then once I have the value, then I'll have the margin to go add the value into the world. But it's the reverse. You have to add value. You have to be there. You have to provide before you can consume.
Absolutely. And God's given everyone like their unique superpower, right? There's something about you, how you're wired, that's a unique gift, right? It may be, how you are with organization and processes. It may be how you are with your personality and your ability to network. It may be something, like for my wife, it's discernment. She's able to see things and see a layer deeper. and she constantly gives me the heads up on things I don't see. And so like whatever that is for you, right? You've got to figure that out, and use that, leverage it, right? Everyone's got this unfair advantage too. Like, that's another way to think of how you can add value, right? Like maybe you have access to something that other people don't have access to, right? Utilize that. It could be a network. It could be money. It could be deal finding. It could be whatever, you've got to figure out what's your kind of unfair advantage, and then how can you add value with that?
That's great. Well, I know we're coming up on time here, and this has been a great conversation. We've gotten very practical and tactical, and love spending some time picking your brain. I always take so much away from the conversation. So I hope you've found just as much value as I have. Usually I love to end off the conversations by giving, a way for people to go and follow along and see, if they have, platforms where they'll go reach out to people. I know you're not a big social media guy, but anything that you would recommend to point people towards, whether if it's not you, but, where can people go if they're, at this point, a lot of what we talked about was wealth creation, passive income.
Yeah.
What would be a good path if someone was saying, hey, I'm ready to take my first step in that direction?
Yeah. That's so funny you say that. Yeah. You won't find me probably, I take seriously. I think social media melts your mind, and the more time you spend on it, the less action you're going to take. So I've been pretty intentional about keeping guardrails around just getting into a death scroll, if you will. And yeah, like I'm kind of like the millionaire next door, right? Like you'd probably never know it by looking at me or living next to me. Right. But I would just encourage you to go invest in yourself. There's no one who's going to invest in you as much as you. And so go invest in yourself. You can use free resources. You can listen to podcasts, anytime you spend in the car, make your car like your little university. There's so much free resources out there. Get accountable, right? Find a mastermind. Just do something to get around the people, to bring your average up. Right.
Love it.
So, yeah.
Awesome. No better way to cap off the episode than that, man. I've really enjoyed the time, and I appreciate you taking some time today to jump on.
Yeah, man. Thanks, Josh. Enjoyed it.
Awesome. Well, guys, thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Take a Step podcast. Always remember, no matter where you are on your growth journey, every mile begins with a step. We'll talk to you in the next episode.